Hey guys, it's Frank. Welcome back to my channel. Have you ever wondered what it's like moving to Toronto straight out of high school at 18 years of age and then leaving Toronto at 25 years of age, living in Calgary while creating YouTube videos about how much you hate the city and then eventually moving back over here? Well, if you're new to this channel, my name is Frank, and if you didn't guess it already, that someone is actually not me. Okay guys, I'm just kidding, it is me. For those of you who are unaware, I moved to Toronto originally for post-secondary education, completed my degree, worked a few years before getting laid off, and then took what I would call a gap year living out in Calgary before finally returning. Now that I have returned back to Toronto, I feel like I gained a new pair of lenses in terms of how I perceive the city. And you know, it didn't really help back in the day that I would be at Dundas Square and I would always have that guy in the corner screaming at me to believe when I just didn't want to believe at the time. As one of Canada's most recognizable city around the globe, there are constant people moving in and out of the city for various reasons with different backgrounds and different walks in life. So with that being said, in this week's video, I'm going to be sharing my perspective and what I've learned moving to Toronto at the age of 18 versus 26. I hope by sharing my viewpoint, you can take my experience and see whether or not the big city lifestyle is right for you. And before we dive into the video, give this video a good old smash. And without further ado, let's begin the video. Similar to any 18-year-old, I didn't know what I wanted to do exactly. I just knew at the time that I wanted to move to a different city for post-secondary education, and it just seemed like the dream because you get to move out of your parents' house, you get to attend university, and all at the same time, you get to experience a brand new lifestyle that you're just not familiar with. If I remember correctly, I won't lie to you guys, I think I had about $3,000 to $5,000 that I made over the summer prior to my move to Toronto, and I just remember I didn't know how I was gonna pay my bills. So initially, moving into the city, I thought I was absolutely doomed. Like, I remember working my part-time job and thinking to myself, I'm not sure how these 4-hour shifts making minimum wage is going to cut it out there. One of the first things I learned is that you're not entirely screwed just because you're not originally from Ontario, because you can apply for the federal student loans and they will look at your income, assess it, and determine based off your status how much money they can give you to survive for that school year. I guarantee you won't be living luxury off of it. If I remember correctly, they gave me about $10,000 to $15,000 for the 8-month school year, not for the full year. And you have to remember that 3/4 of the amount that they give you goes towards your tuition, which gives you a remaining balance of about $5,000 that you can play around with for rent, food, or anything else. Then it just hits you how expensive Toronto is. Like, for example, in my first year in Toronto, I was living in a basement suite, paying $650 for a single bedroom, living with 3 other roommates, and this place is disgusting. Like, it had mice and mold, and you're just telling yourself, like, how is this even worth $650? And that's the thing that I want to point out, that your standard of living in Toronto will likely lower, but at the same time, the cost for rent will go up. And the justification that you want to tell yourself is that there's a lot more things going on in the city, so you won't be at home as often that you may think you are. At the time of this video, if you go on Google and you search up the population of Toronto, you would only get 3 million people, but the realistic is about double it, 6 million, because you gotta factor in the greater Toronto area. And with more people in general, there are a lot more things going on in the city, more opportunities, more food options, but with that comes with a higher cost of living altogether. Now moving back to Toronto, I have a clear understanding as to why I'm living here. I feel like when I was 18 years old, I was lost and confused, and I just knew that I wanted to go to Toronto to attend and complete school, but I didn't have any purpose or a big why as to why I wanted to stay there going forward. I easily got sidetracked with all the negative aspects about Toronto, such as extreme rent prices, commuting 1+ hours to get to my destination, and then not just recognizing that big cities in general in North America, such as Los Angeles, New York, even Vancouver, that they all have similar characteristics of all those things that I just mentioned. Toronto, or any big city in general, it's not for everyone, and I recognize that even when I had friends from like Winnipeg or smaller cities come visit me out in Toronto, that they almost feel a little bit overwhelmed or shocked by everything that's going on in the city. I recognize also that Toronto in general is fairly large for Canada's standards, and you know, I can't just make assumptions based on one area is a reflection of every other area and representation of Toronto. For example, during the 7 years, I was living in the center core of Toronto, and I felt like my perception of the city was distorted in the sense of that small sample kind of represented Toronto, the greater Toronto area, but it just wasn't true. When I was living in Calgary, there were certainly days that I just kept on thinking about all the various food selections out in Toronto, the number of events such as marathon running that I enjoy to do, and even all the infinite number of bubble tea shops that existed here, and I'm not kidding about the last one especially. And then simply, I thought about content creation with my YouTube channel, and I know not everyone's going to agree with this, but I knew that for myself especially, it was kind of like a mentality aspect where I recognized that living in Toronto, my mentality definitely is shifted, and I just felt more motivated to do YouTube, capture more B-roll, and just explore the city. I guess what I'm trying to say is, sure, does Toronto get expensive? Absolutely, but I kind of feel like people sort of forget exactly what they're saving their money for. And for me personally, it's the experience that is the most valuable. And I can save a lot more money living out in Calgary and pay less in rent for $13.50 for my apartment. But I guess felt that living out in Toronto, I'm just more motivated, and the experience is the valuable part for me. Moving to Toronto at 18 versus 26, what did I learn overall? The first is that you should absolutely go for it, and it doesn't have to be Toronto. I'm talking about any city that you have interest for in moving to. I am telling you firsthand is that you're gonna have many opinions flying from different directions, from your family, your friends, from your hamster. And at the end of it, the one thing you have to realize is that the decision boils down to you. Only you can make the decision that works best for you. And remember, should you ever move to a different city, just realize that you always have a home-based backup plan, and that's your original city should anything ever go wrong. And this is why I kind of told myself when I first moved to Toronto that I could always go back to Winnipeg. And then when I went over to Calgary, I even told myself I now had the option of going to Toronto or even Winnipeg for that matter. It really eases your mind to know that you have a fallback plan, and it makes your big decision slightly less intimidating. At the end of it, guys, you won't know until you give it a try, and I gave it a shot out in Calgary for a single year. It didn't work out, and I decided to move back to Toronto. But even just reflecting and thinking back, I learned so much more about myself, what I wanted, that to the point it just felt like I left the hyperbolic time chamber from Dragon Ball Z. In conclusion, guys, that's my perspective and what I've learned moving to Toronto at the time I was 18 to my present age at 26. I fully understand that big cities just aren't for everyone, and it does really take some time to know exactly why you're there, why you want to be there, and what you want to gain from living in it. Especially living in Toronto, I kind of feel that you can easily be steered into the wrong direction if you don't have a purpose or a why that's bigger than making big money from your 9-to-5 job. For now, Toronto is the right city for me, and every day ever since moving here, I'm really enjoying what the city has to offer for me. But anyhow, with that said, guys, if you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If anyone's curious to know the cost of living of Toronto in comparison to another city such as Calgary, let me know in the comment section below. Hit that subscribe button, and I guess I'll see you guys all in my next video. Peace.